Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie, I'm a full-time artist, and today I'm going to be filming a desk tour. So I want to share how I store all of my art materials because I am doing a daily art challenge and I'm in my sketchbook all the time. We recently redid this studio space, so if you want to see that I will link that down in the description and up in the cards. But it's become a really functional space. It used to be a garage, but now it feels really calming, it's a really nice vibe. I feel like I can be really creative in here and I can spread out because I have got this long L-shaped desk. So I'm going to be showing you exactly how I store my art materials. You can see all my pencils and things up there, but I'll also be showing you what I keep in my drawers and how I use the space. So I hope this gives you some tips and ideas for storing art supplies and making sure that it works for you. We've been in here almost 4 months now, so I do feel like I've made the space work for me. I know exactly where everything is now and I've definitely made sure that it's functional. So like I said, I hope that this is helpful and I'll give you the tour now. So over here on this side of the desk we have got some of my reference books. These are my most recent acquisitions that I bought from a charity shop. And I don't have room for them over on the shelf where all my other reference books live. A little decorative pot, and then this I bought from Amazon. This is just a book stand, but I use it mostly for propping up my reference books. So it's very handy to just pop here and then you can lift these up to hold the pages in place. But when I'm not using a reference book, I'll also use it to hold my paintings. So just the loose paintings that I do when I'm not working in my sketchbook, they will live up here. Then I've got this print which is by Rebecca Green, one of my favourite artists, and I bought this in a studio sale. And a sad looking prayer plant which I'm actually really struggling to make happy. I don't know if he needs a bit more humidity, but he keeps coming in with new leaves and then dying off, so if you do have any tips please do let me know. So I also did just want to mention how I store my acrylic paint, because this is the sort of one art supply that I don't keep around me. This is in the cupboard behind us. And I just keep it in this old box. I don't have a huge amount, so it does fit nicely in here. I've got my thicker masking tape as well, but these are mostly the System 3 Daler Rowney acrylic paints. I do have a few tubes of the thicker paint as well that I've had for many years, so they are a little bit dried out. I tend to reach for these first, but that's just where I keep my acrylic paint, and I can just bring this box over when I am working in acrylic. So that's just really handy to have, and like I said, it does just live in the cupboards behind me. So I would say this is my favourite corner of my desk. It's the most colourful. Obviously it's got all my pencils and pens, and this is where I reach for all of my tools. So I'm going to walk you through it. Over here on the left is actually my least used pot of pencils, but these have got all like my specialist pencils in. So I've got some charcoal pencils and metallic pencils, some watercolour pencils. Basically a lot of the pencils that I don't generally use day to day but are really good for texture work. Back here in the corner are all my paintbrushes. So this is just in a really big pot, and these are like my large paintbrushes when I'm painting big and I tape some paper up on the wall or something. Basically the brushes that I don't use every day. Some flathead ones which I don't tend to use, mostly I use round brushes, but handy to have, as well as like foam brushes and different ones that I might need depending on what I'm doing. In this pot is just a pot of, again, random pens and pencils, little rulers, my little craft knife. I don't reach for these very often, but it's handy to have some pens and pencils around that aren't like specialist art ones. So if I just move this out of the way, behind here are more pens and pencils. These are, again, ones I don't reach for every day but are handy to have. So I've got my Poscas in here, I've got some calligraphy pens and a dip pen, some water brush pens as well, which I want to start using more of when I'm doing plein air, and basically more specialist ones. So these are the ones that I really don't reach for often. This one at the front here has some larger brushes which I do reach for more often, another dip pen, some Tombos that wouldn't fit in the Tombow pot, some pencils which the Eroge-10 that I don't reach for very often, and then I do go for these quite often in my daily journaling. So these are the Uni Uniball 1 pens, and that's just handy to have. I was running out of space in my journaling pot, which I'll show you later, so I had to pop them in here, but these are really handy for doing different colours in my journal. Then onto these two mugs, which I keep them in mugs because I find them really handy to pull in and out when I want to use them. And I would say this one in this little owl mug is my most used pencils. This is the one that I'll grab all the time to bring closer to me and work in my daily sketchbook. It does have 2 brush pens which should be in the other pot, but most of these are my Luminance and Derwent drawing pencils. There's a few others in here as well that have migrated because obviously I do use this every day, but this is generally the pencil pot I'll reach for when I'm creating. A lot of the Luminance are getting small now, so they are getting a little bit lost in the bottom, but I'll generally find the colours that I want here. I think I've got a good range, and as I do build up my Luminance collection, I'm hoping this will grow. And then behind it, I've got my Tombows. Now, when I do photograph or film my reels and show off these, I do actually flip it the other way up, so I have all the colours towards the top, so all the lids, and that does make it easier to find. But I do find that it actually dries out the ink, so I found that having it upside down and storing them this way means that the ink doesn't dry out. But for aesthetic reasons, when I am filming a reel, I'll turn them all the other way up, just so I can easily see what I'm getting, and also it looks better for the video. So those live up there. This crate down here is for my journaling, so I try to organise it. It's very messy, but you can see I've got my old Hobonichi in there as well. This is what I grab when I'm decorating my daily pages, so I do journal daily in my Hobonichi, which I'll show you in a minute. But this has got some like pet tape, some stickers, some memo pads. Basically I'll just pull this out when I'm creating in an evening. And next to it is this pouch, and this is what I used to take and sometimes do take with me when I'm plein air drawing and I'm not taking the pencil roll that I showed you in my recent video. But this has got basically my eco lines that I use most often. I've got a multi-pack set of eco lines, but these are the colours that I go for. So basically neutrals and some like nature colours. These just live in here and it's handy to grab, and I know where the colours are that I want. And then I've also got my loose Neocolors. So I do have a set of Neocolors, but I have been building up the collection and buying a few more shades, and they just live in these boxes here. And again, I know where they are, so I generally know which shades are in here, so I just keep that in there and it's easy to access and I can just pull it out when I need to. Okay, so back on the top shelf, this is my basically daily paintbrushes. This is the pot that I'll reach for when I'm creating in my sketchbook because they are smaller. Most of the ones in that back pot are larger ones, and then these are my smaller, more detailed fine brushes. My usual ones, which are the round brushes, and I think they are size 10 and a size 8. They actually usually live in here, but they are on the draining board at the moment drying, but those are my go-tos. But when I am doing more fine details, I'll go for something from this pot. And behind I do have a plant, which is a little bit wonky, but I do really enjoy having plants in the studio, and there are plants all over our house, so it's nice to have some greenery in here. So back to the pencils. I find this is the best way to store them because generally if it's not going to be from this pot here, I'll be looking for a specific colour or specific shade. And so I have organised most of my pencils by colour because generally if it's not in there, I'll know where to look for in here. These are all recycled jars, so these are just for my glass recycling from like pasta sauces and things, and then I rinse them out and clean them and then pop some colour coding washi tape. Not that you need it, but it did make my little brain happy. And this is the only exception to that rule. These are my Derwent Inktense pencils, although I do sometimes use them like just as coloured pencils like the rest. Because they are Inktense, they are water soluble. Generally I'll keep them separate, so that's why they're in a separate little pot. But you can see here I've got brown, green, blue, greys and blacks, pinks and purples, oranges and reds, and then yellows. And I do have like some miscellaneous things, so I've got my scissors and a ruler, a bone folder, and then some more scissors. And I mean, I have colour coded those into the right pots as well, but basically I'll just grab those when I am journaling, and it's just handy to have them when there is space in the jars. This is basically just one of my favourite corners of the studios. I really like the colours and it is really handy to use. So it not only looks good, but I do find it really helpful to have my colours laid out in this way and being able to grab and see exactly what I need. Okay, so down here are my sketchbooks. So these bottom 3 now are old sketchbooks, so they are filled, but these 2 are my current daily sketchbooks that I've just moved into from these 2, and I know I can put these away now in a box because I'm no longer reaching for them, but I just really like the colourway. I really love the rainbow effect of having them there, so I'm probably going to keep them there anyway, but these are the 2 that I'm grabbing daily. And then this here, this is my daily journal, so like I mentioned, this is what I grab when I am doing my daily pages, and it is quite personal, so I'm only going to do a little flip through here, but this is what I reach for every evening. And then in this pot here, this is very sweet. I've had this for quite a few years. This is from House of Rhyme. And then in here are all of my little clips. So you might have seen on my Instagram photos that I do like to clip the pages, and it's also really handy when I'm working plein air. I've also got the very large sharpener for my Stabilo Woodies and my usual pencil sharpener, as well as some little like masking tape that I might use for if I'm blocking off a specific panel. But that's where my clips live, and that's just handy to have on the desk and grab when I am photographing work or holding pages down. So this is generally the less aesthetic part of my desk, but very useful. I do have 2 more clips up here, which you might have seen in my recent London haul, and a little gachapon that was from Japan, a coaster back there, and then my monitors. This desk riser Mitch and I built when we were doing the whole studio reno, but it's very handy to have this riser because it does give me extra desk space. Down here is what I connect my mic into, and then I've got my keyboard and my mouse sits under here as well. This bowl I bought from Turkey about 9 years ago, and that's what I use for my daily rubbish. It's where I sharpen my pencils into, and when I'm cutting out the little nameplates for my Patreon display, all of the rubbish goes into that little bowl. Okay, so along this top shelf above my desk, I've got a pileia plant and then some of these little colourful books, which are the Observer's books. And I just really like those. I like the way that they look. Again, I've got the different colours. And then I've got 2 little sketchbooks. This is my little 12 by 12 centimetre Royal Talens sketchbooks. And I just keep those there. I've got the pink one that I'm currently using and then a blue one to move into. These 2 boxes, this one is full of washi tape, and this is like the one that I grab again when I'm doing my daily journaling. So this has got my fountain pen in, some little daily date papers, my glue stick, and then some of the washi tape that I generally will use more often. So I'll grab this box rather than the big washi box unless I'm looking for a specific design. Then further along I've got another plant. I've got this big candle here as well, which I don't ever light, but I do really like the pot. Behind it I've got a little print. I've got 2 more little gachapons here, which are from Japan, which my sister recently brought back for me. And then I've got some reference books again. So these don't fit on the shelf, and I also really liked the styling here. So I've got 2 illustrated books. I've got the trees and the food plants, and then this book here is by The Tate and is all about the Cézanne exhibition that I went to see earlier this year. On this side of my desk, this is where I tuck my headphones. My mouse lives under there as well as this little desk pad, which I just use for quick notes. I've got 2 more little gachapon, which our friend Jack brought back from Japan. I've got another little plant in a pot, the all-important cup of tea, of course, and then in this mug, these are the pens that I always use for journaling. So this is what I'll grab for when I'm filling out my diary, and also my daily journal when I'm not using my fountain pen. There are a few of the mild liners in here, a lot of the Muji pens, which I do use as like my daily pen, and then some mechanical pencils and a few more of the coloured pens. And this is just handy to grab when I am filling out my diary, which I do colour code with the highlighters. And then there's also random things like a crochet hook in there. So I'm not always the most organised, but I do try. So I do want to show you what's in these drawers, which are right underneath my desk, because I do use these all the time and they do store our materials in here. So this drawer, this has basically the things that I'll generally reach for every day. I've got my 2023 diary in here. This is a cutting board which I will cut things out on here, but I also use this as like a protector of the desk when I am drawing the little Patreon names. Then some blue tack. I've got some glue tape. This is where I keep all of my memory cards and the reader. Some post-it notes. Back here I've got my Stabilo woodies, so that's handy to have. Had to buy the white separately, so sadly it doesn't fit in there, but it does live with it. And then these are the rest of the Ecoline pens I mentioned earlier. Like I said, I don't generally use these brighter colours, so they just live back there. I've also got my mini guillotine, which is really helpful, and my lip cream. Then this is really handy for when I am packing orders, just to check the sizes, and then some more coloured pens back there, as well as a scale which I use to weigh my orders. Next drawer is actually journaling things, so this is where I keep all of my stickers. These are my sticker albums. I've also got this pouch which is filled with adhesive, so I've got some spare glue sticks in there and also some more tape runners. Then my other sticker album, another one there, and then this is the paper trimmer and also folder, which I don't use that often, but it's good to have for when I am scrapbooking or journaling. So this next drawer is the one that I go in every single day. This has got my gouache paints, my Neocolors, basically everything that I generally will use in my sketchbook. So obviously I've got the tin of 40 Neocolors that I mentioned earlier. This was a really good starting set, but I have, like you've seen, built up my colour shades a little bit more. Then I've got my paper palette. This is what I use to mix all of my colours on, and then I can just tear off a sheet when I'm done with it. I've got another sketchbook in here. This is my Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook, which I don't use daily, but it's handy to have close by if I do want to work with some heavier mixed media. And then this does look a little bit like chaos, but it is organised. So down here in this tin, this is where all my gouache paints live, so they're just handy to reach for. I've got some of my Posca markers along the front here. And then this little section is all of my inks. So these are my acrylic inks, and also I've got some Ecoline inks here, as well as the more recent Rohrer and Klingner inks, so I've been really enjoying using those. I've also got my little pot of masking fluid and some little pots of gouache. So basically anything in a pot all live in this front section. And then I've got this little bowl filled with the sponges I use for my pan pastels. Then I've got my soft pastels. These are towards the back because, again, I don't use these that often. I've got a pack of oil pastels here, and then my Prismacolor coloured pencils. Again, I don't reach for these that often, so that's why they are towards the back. But one thing I do reach for, and is usually along the front, are my pan pastels. So I only have a small collection of these, but they live in there, and it's just handy to bring out the box and keep them nice and neat in there instead of stacking them towards the front. Here's my other ones. And then back here I've got my Himi gouache palette, which again I rarely reach for, but it's handy to have. And then a spare paper palette at the back there. Another pan pastel in there, and then down the side I've got my water jug. So this also has like the dirty rags that I use to wipe my paintbrush, but this one and this one I use for my water. And then this is a pot of gelatos which I found in my stash that I used to use for my scrapbooking many years ago. But I've popped those there because I want most of my art supplies in one place. So that's that drawer. It may not be the neatest, but it does feel very organised for me, and I do know where everything is. Next drawer is kind of the boring drawer. This is where all my electronics live. So I've got my ring light, I've got a spare extension lead, my backup SSD drive, and then I've also got like my camera lenses. This is bubble wrap because I have to protect my desk sometimes, because the mini tripod that I use for my time lapses tends to mark the softwood, so that's what that's there for. An external battery bank. This is what I attach to my tripod when I'm doing time lapses on my phone, and just leads and like battery chargers and things. So not very exciting, but very useful to have all in one place. And then probably the most boring drawer, this has just got all my papers in for my printers, which live just under there, and that's just handy to have nearby. So that's the end of my desk tour and how I store all of my art supplies. I hope it was helpful. Please do let me know if you have any suggestions or ideas for me, and if you store differently, then I'd love to know down below in the comments as well. I hope you enjoyed seeing my space and where I work every day, and I will see you next Sunday with a new YouTube video. See you later!